Welcome to Mondays with Melissa. Today I want to talk about life estates. And you may not be terribly familiar with the term life estate because it's really not something that's done that often anymore when planning. But people come to me or call me all the time and say, Mom has the house in a life trust or a living trust or some funny name that I know they mean life estate. And this was a planning tool we used to use all the time before there were major changes to the Medicaid laws. But even though this planning was done prior to the change in the law, individuals who did life estate are now coming to the point where maybe they're going to a nursing home where they need care, and so the documents are coming back up and we have to deal with them. So I want to talk a little bit about what it means and the impact it can have on selling the property. And this comes directly from a situation with a family that I've dealt with. So basically, a life estate is a transfer of property to usually children, and the parent retains a life estate in the property. So the deed, if you look at it, will say from mom and dad to the children, and then on the bottom it'll say a life estate is reserved for, and it'll have the parents' names, whether it's one parent or two parents. That's how it looks, and it's just a deed. So it's not creating a trust, it's not putting the property into a trust, it's a deed transfer to the kids, and mom and dad retain a life interest. That means they retain the right to live in the home as long as they're alive. They keep all their tax exemptions and they remain responsible for the costs, expenses, and upkeep on the property. Great. There are some real problems with the life estate, especially when we're dealing with Medicaid. So if there's a life estate in the property for dad, let's just say for argument's sake, and dad goes into a nursing home. Dad goes on Medicaid, the house was transferred. That transfer started the 5-year clock for Medicaid purposes, so we are now 5 years out. The house is completely protected for Medicaid purposes. The life estate that dad retained doesn't count as an asset for Medicaid, so that's great. The problem is now the house is empty. So what do we do with the house? Well, some people will choose to rent the house. The issue there is that with the life estate, the rental income actually goes to the life tenant, which is dad, who's in Medicaid in a nursing home. So that can cause an issue. Sometimes families will say, well, why don't we just sell the house? Well, the problem with selling the house, there's a couple of problems. The first one is that life estate, even though Medicaid doesn't count it as an asset, it has a value. So if you have a $500,000 home, dad's interest could be $100,000 of that, or even half of that. And so when the house gets sold, he's going to come into his share. And again, he's on Medicaid, he's in a nursing home, and now he's going to have way too much money to stay qualified for Medicaid. The other piece of that causes another problem has to do with taxes and capital gains tax when the property is sold. So when you have a life estate in a property, if you hold on to that property until the person who transferred it passes away, you get a full step up in basis when that person passes away. That means your basis in the property as the beneficiaries, as the children, your basis becomes fair market value on the date that dad passed away. So if you turn around and sell that property, you're not going to pay any capital gains tax. Now, your dad could have purchased that property for $23,000 however many years ago, and now it's worth $500,000 or $600,000, and there's not going to be any tax there on that gain. But if you sell the house while dad's still alive, you're going to have a capital gains tax problem because you're selling it at the original basis, which was dad's purchase price. Of course, there's capital improvements and things like that come into play, but you're not going to get that step up. And dad's exclusion, everybody gets that one-time $250,000 exclusion, so you don't get taxed on the first $250,000 of gain, is only going to be asked to his life estate portion and not to the whole property. So you could take a substantial tax hit. There's many things to look at here, many different little nuances to look at in determining whether or not it makes sense to sell the property. But the takeaway is don't just go and sell it. Have a conversation with somebody who's knowledgeable about Medicaid and about this life estate and real estate issue, because it's really going to come down to dollars and cents and what makes the most sense to do in any given situation. So remember that term, life estate, and take a look if you're sitting with a deed that your parents had transferred to you, and see if the bottom says that it's subject to a life estate, because you can start asking questions now. Give us a call if you have any questions, if you'd like to set up a free consultation in any of our offices in Melville, Garden City, and Port Jefferson. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.